Okay, we're live. I just wrapped Artcasters, and I have a little bit more cartooning left in me for the night. So if you guys haven't watched Artcasters, definitely we had like a full round table with a bunch of guests, and most of what I'm going to do in the next hour or two, I have a hard out at like 2 in the morning. But I want to get as much done on this page. I want to at least finish this page before I have to change gears. Um, so, some good news for people who tune in. Well, first, actually, I was going to just jump into it, but I should probably, if you're tuning in for the first time, I'll just explain who I am. So, I'm Joshua Kemble. I've been a professional illustrator and graphic designer for well over 15 years. I've been a professional art director. That's what I do for a living for about 7 plus. And when I'm not art directing or working in graphic design and illustration, I'm working on these crazy comic books, graphic novels. So I create a lot of slice of life and autobiographic novels. So this is my graphic novel that's coming out from Graphic Mundi in June, and it's for release everywhere. So basically, if you like what I do and you like these streams, a good way to support me would be to go to your local bookstore and ask them to pre-order Jacob's Apartment and carry it in their store. And that can go from like a box chain store to a non-box chain store. As you can see, I'm already well into the work day because I was doing this on Artcasters, which is the other show that I live stream every Thursday. Anyhow, so Jacob's Apartment is a story about Jacob, who is a teetotaling Christian who's kind of questioning his faith because of his father slowly dying of cancer, and of Sarah, who is his roommate, who's kind of questioning her own identity because of a broken relationship with an ex-boyfriend. And they end up kind of having like a young love sort of meeting of the minds while they're going through these tumultuous changes in their lives, in which their dreams and reality kind of start interweaving. So if you're a fan of like Ghost World or anything equivalent to that, like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, that kind of story, like slice of life, somewhat surreal stories, this book will be right up your alley. So this comes out. I'm really excited about it. I'm really proud of Graphic Mundi and the job they did printing it. And this is just the advanced copy that I have. But I'm delighted that it's coming, and that's a way you can support what I do. Another book, which I'm working on, at least during this stream, I'm working on the sequel to, is Two Stories, which is out from Marcosia. And this will be available on Amazon right now for purchase. And if you ordered it today, the second it arrives, it'll be shipped out immediately. And I think if you have Prime, you get free shipping, which is a cool thing. And then it's also available at fine independent bookstores everywhere. If you have a local indie shop, like your local comic book shop, you can ask them to order this as well from Marcosia. And it's distributed, I believe, through Ingram. So anyhow, that's basically that. Those are my wares. And I'm going to be trying to work on inking more of page 26 of this book. So I have a bunch of news, and before I kind of get lost in that, I want to just kind of get into the process of drawing, so I don't just talk without drawing, which was actually a topic that we talked about on Artcasters, how like it's possible to kind of talk and draw at the same time. And it's a challenge. You have to, at least for me, I have to make sure I stay focused on what I'm doing, because I can get really into the process of kind of chatting and kind of lose touch with my art. So it's like this weird flow state you got to get into. And I appreciate everybody who's watching right now. So if you're watching, welcome. Feel free to chime in the chats. And Philip, I noticed you just joined in the chats, and it's nice to see you again, buddy. And yeah, let's get to making some art. And I hope you guys are having a lot of progress on your art journeys as well. So I've been working gradually on the last few streams on this page. You just kind of show it. Like, I work really big, so that's what I'm working on inking, and I have about 2 2.25 panels left to ink. What I'm hoping to get done by 2 is at least to make at least some decent progress on this second panel. Finishing this panel is definitely a goal of mine. With so many awesome guests on Artcasters, I might have actually fallen into that trap of kind of like enjoying the conversation so much that I probably didn't get as much progress on the panel as I'd like. Some news regarding Two Stories. I might have to put a little bit of the rest of the creation of this book a little bit on hold, which is a bummer because I have like the entire book like thumbnailed out, and I also have the whole script written. And so at this point, it's like kind of one of those scenarios. Oh, Philip, that's a really good question. I'll hit it in a second. And then Frank, I notice you're in the chats. How's it going, Frank? If you want to hop on too, feel free. I can send you a link. Just give me a heads up. But anyhow, so like the news on Two Stories Book 2 is that like while it's like really like I'm making good progress, I'm getting good momentum on it. I don't foresee it taking a massive amount of time to complete. It's going to be an undertaking, as all graphic novels are. But I've talked about this a little bit on stream, that I have another book deal, which I've mentioned, which is a historical fiction book that that basically has a script that was written by my sister, and we had kind of floating around being pitched out during the very beginning of the pandemic. And it is a really cool historical fiction book. I think the script is brilliant. And so we got the good news that we had a publishing deal a couple months back. And it was just this really thrilling thing. It was sort of surreal because the news came a little bit after Jacob's Apartment had gotten a publisher. And so my sister has been slowly working with the editor to basically get the book in shape, like get all the edits done, like flesh out some of the story and so on. And so while that's been happening, I've been trying to kind of crank out as much of Two Stories Book 2 as I can before basically my life is consumed by this graphic novel. So I'm just extremely excited about the book, but it's like going to be like 230 something comic pages that I have to thumbnail out and then execute in probably about a year, which is kind of intimidating. That's more than I've ever done. But I think it's possible. The style's a lot different. I actually worked on the thumbnails for the pitch on Livestream. So I think that if you kind of are clever and you sort of dig back into my live streams, you might be able to actually see some sneak peeks. The cool thing is my publisher is actually okay with kind of sharing that process as it goes, as long as I'm not like spoiling the entire book. So I'll probably be, once I'm done with this page, as hard as it is when you're like knee deep in something, I might have to shelve this project temporarily as I like really start laying the groundwork to make that graphic novel, which is, you know, a hard thing to do because I think that Two Stories is probably might be the most important work I feel I've made. And I really feel strongly about like the quality of the second book. Like, and also it's a 2-part story, and like this is going to be the conclusion, and it's a really important conclusion. So it's a little heartbreaking to have to shelve it a little bit for the time that I'm doing that book. And I might even try to juggle both, but I think that like anyone who's a cartoonist, especially if you've seen, like, I'm not the fastest cartoonist. So the reality is probably I'm not going to be able to do both at the same time. Like, yeah. But if I can find a way to kind of sneak in progress on Two Stories Book 2, I'll do that as well. But I think anybody who's familiar with what I do, I'm usually balancing a day job in which I am, you know, art directing a pretty long commute, like about a 2-hour commute, and then also a family. And all of that is very time consuming, right? So for me, like my comicking time's pretty limited as is. And so having an extra graphic novel is just going to be very, very tough. And then Frank was saying, I remember those live streams, which is cool. Frank, I'll send you a link in a second. I just want to finish my thought. So basically, that's kind of the deal. But the exciting thing is the process is a lot easier to share. Like these pages I'm doing traditionally. And so everything's being inked traditionally and it's on this giant page. So like the setup for these live streams is pretty complicated comparatively to like what it would be if I were just working digitally, which I'm going to be doing for the next book. Now, if you're hearing that and you're like, oh man, it's digital, or you're concerned that like the quality is not going to be like quite up to par with like the art that I do all the time, have no fear. It's going to be high quality book. The style that it's done in, it takes place in Victorian times, and so it's a very like Victorian style. Like I'm kind of trying to make it look like a I might be quoting this wrong, but I think like in Victorian era there were like these prints called like linotype or something. I might be wrong about like what the type of print, but it's like a tinted photograph. And I'm kind of making a look like that, like an old illustration style where it's got like sort of like a rendering kind of vibe with like flat tinted colors. And I'm really excited about it. But I have to block out and thumbnail that entire book like very quickly. And so, I mean, really to hit my deadline, I probably need to be, thumbnailing quite a lot of pages. I haven't quite worked out the logistics entirely, and I'm going to be doing that this weekend. But I'm probably going to be live streaming as I'm doing that. So expect to see a lot more of me. If you enjoy these streams, understand I'm probably going to be live streaming almost nightly. And I will definitely be probably spending most weekends in my studio, maybe with the camera on while I'm doing it, because I literally, in order to hit this deadline, I'm probably going to have to give up anything but comics on the weekends, save like, book time with my kid, or like an hour or two of like playtime with my kid. I think other than that, my weekends are pretty much booked now. But it's a good problem to have. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. But anyhow, so that's the news. If you're curious, if you're watching this after the fact too, and you like my work and you have any questions about the book or anything like that, feel free to like put them in the comments. And speaking of questions, oh wait, before I get into that, gosh, Frank, I got to send you the link. Okay, let me send Frank the link. And then Philip, I want to handle the question you asked because that's a really good question. I'll be right back. I'm just going to send this link. Okay. Link has been sent, which is good. So Frank, you're welcome to hop on. So now Philip, I'll handle your question. You were asking, how do you scan like pretty much a paper of this size that I do for printing? How do you scan it? So first off, like you don't do it in one scan. I have a large format scanner, so it's like a 13 by 19 scanner, but even that doesn't fit the pages that I work on for this. So what I do is I scan it in fourths. And so what you do is like, kind of like, if this screen were the scanner, I would like kind of align this, and this would be one side. I'd do a scan like this. It's like the other side, and so on, like in fourths, right? So it's like I divide the paper, and I don't cut it or anything. I just scan it in fourths, and then I overlay them together and stitch them together in Photoshop. There's like an auto stitch function that you can do in Photoshop, but I don't like it as much as manually doing it because quite often if you use that, it'll like miss details or kind of warp your page. So it's better to often just overlay it and do the real thing. And speaking of doing the real thing, here is Frank Salazar. How's it going, Frank?
It's going good. It's working on a sketch card.
What do you think of Artcasters today?
I liked it. It was a really good conversation, or a good topic, and then just everyone just chiming in and all the jokes. So,
Yeah, I swear, like Jim is so much like that in person too. He's just a very funny guy, and so naturally, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not just Jim, but it's like he's sort of the tether that keeps us all very silly. Um,
yeah,
and it is so funny, man. Like, Jeremy too is like super quick witted. Like Ken is like, I love Ken's sense of humor because he's very like a very dry, quick wit, but
yeah,
also like he'll go like really funny, like really quick. And then of course like everybody else, like Gary Scott, like all of these people have like good humor. But yeah, it was fun. It was a fun episode. It felt like hanging out, you know. Um,
yeah.
yeah. So how is everything in Texas and stuff right now?
It's going good, going fine.
Nice. Weather's okay. Is it getting
Yeah,
hotter? It's starting to heat up in the valley. That's why I was asking.
yeah, it's not that hot. It's just it's pretty like like in between. So it's a
Okay.
little bit of breezy, but it's not not
Got
too
it.
cold, not too hot. So it's like it's just right.
Would you
So
say it's like easy breezy and
easy breezy.
beautiful?
Yes, easy breezy. Is that a song?
I think it's like a cover. It's Cover Girl, the the
Oh, okay.
the ads where it's yeah, it's like one of those advertisements that's burned into my skull. Um,
Okay.
so how like the comic you've already ordered, like you ordered it then you've already ordered.
Yeah, well, I sent the files in and I sent a message today, making sure they got it because I was having trouble with my email. But they
Okay,
said they got it and they'll place the order in about 2 days. But I was given an estimate like it'll be done, like once everything's in, it'll be done like in 2 weeks. So,
cool.
yeah, it's,
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm a little bummed about having to potentially like it's hard when you're kind of like really getting some momentum on a project to have to kind of put it on hold for a little bit.
yeah,
But I think it's well worth it, you know. It's like a good opportunity, so I don't know. I had this weird thing last year where I was just kind of saying yes to everything and
yeah,
and it's led to a lot of really good opportunities, but even as a Christian, I kind of viewed it as like there's things you pray for, and then when God like answers your prayers like tenfold, it's important to kind of I don't know, like this is nerdy, but it's like I feel like if you're being called to build an ark, you just kind of build the ark, like that's what you
yeah,
have to do. And it's not like I have to build an ark during like a flood or something, but I feel like this is kind of my ark where it's like, okay, this is where God wants me. He's opening all these doors, like I need to actually walk through them, even if it's like taxing and seems impossible. I kind of need to, because
mhm,
again, like also like these doors don't open all the time, so it's like if I don't
yeah.
walk through it now, like that would be crazy. So yeah, so I'm excited but a little bummed about. I don't know if you have an easy time with that, like although I'm also excited about it because it's going to be like I've been working in this style, you know like Jacob's is a good example too. It's like Jacob's apartment was a totally, I mean, I think people can tell it's the same artist, but it's not like this hatchy version that I've been using for this.
Yeah.
So there is like an excitement about the prospect of like being forced to switch gears to a totally different style that's a little more
Hmm.
organic. I'm kind of excited about that. So, but it's a little intimidating,
Yeah. Yeah, but I bet it'll be fun and like once you get into it more.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I'm also really excited about kind of spending some time with the characters, So like the thumbnailing process I think is going to be the most fun of the whole process.
yeah,
Um I feel like that's as a cartoonist, especially when you're working from someone else's script, I think that's where you get to contribute and kind of be a co-creator because that's where you're
yeah,
like doing character art and you're kind of working out like the feeling, you know. which is like so important. Like if you read like, and by the way, I'm no like, uh, oh my gosh, now I'm blanking out on his name. Dave Gibbons, right, from
Oh, okay.
Watchmen. I'm no Dave
Yeah.
Gibbons, but if you read Watchmen, it's like it's brilliant because of the writing, but like the writing would be nothing without that amazing, like the way the art was worked out.
Yeah.
And so it's like you can see why like that book is credited to both. Like it's not just credited to like Alan Moore or whatever, you know. Um, because like that would be insane to just not credit like, you know, Dave Gibbons like brilliant work on it, you know.
Yeah. It was
So
a collaborative effort.
yeah, and like his stuff is so equally like anytime like you see the movie that was adapted from it, and it's like not
Mhm.
just pulling from Alan Moore, it's like that movie wouldn't be anything without that art to like draw from. So I think that's going to be my goal, like as lofty as that is. And then I probably won't succeed at like, I don't think it's going to be like Dave Gibbons level of like crazy detailed and awesome. But my point is I want to contribute to the story in that much of a way. Right.
Yeah.
And your big contribution, I think, like, in the co-creator, like being the cartoonist who's drawing it, is really going to be like character art, like picking story beats and moments, lighting, costume, like historical research on like on what's in the images and stuff, what you choose to kind of leave
Yeah.
out, like all of that's a lot of fun. So I'm excited about that. That'll be fun. But it's like any good thing in life where, you know, I don't know, you know, doing art, like it's like having a kid. Like you're like when you're waiting for a kid to be born, you're just filled
Yeah.
with like all sorts of like, oh my gosh, like can I do this? Like, you know, like all that stuff. And then the kid arrives and you're like, this is awesome. Or you're like, this is overwhelming, but it's also really cool and it's a gift, you know. So it's like it's I think it's kind of like that, you know. Um, except like
Yeah.
way less important. um, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Um,
No, it's
yeah, it's
good.
an
I get
interesting.
it. That's where I'm kind of there or going to be there soon with War Banker 7, because the way we're doing it, because um like the whole Captain Goggles and Maskellman mini comic, that wasn't something that we had planned. That wasn't something that I had a this story that I wanted to tell. It was just gonna be a one-off
Yeah,
mini comic, and then from there it just kind of developed. Because we talked with Anna about it, and she's more like, if you're gonna do a comic, have a story that you
yeah,
want to tell. So we we talked elements and just like plot, and came up with a basic uh, plot that we liked, and then it kept being changed. So that's why I decided like at 3 mini comics, like that's it. Like I'm gonna end it there, so we can work on like the actual story that came out of it. And
yeah,
so she's like writing the script, and she's going like back and forth, and she's adding like different elements from stuff she's already had. So so I still put in my input, but now it's like it's more her story. So
yeah,
I'm just waiting for that script, and she's done some character design. So like, okay, I need to level up my art, because
yeah,
so it can be at the level of what she's writing and of
yeah,
what she's already done. So so it's like, so I'm just like waiting for like some pages, but
yeah,
uh,
yeah. I think
and it,
it's a good opportunity, but it like yeah, it's a little bit it's kind of weird. It's like both easier and harder than working from your own script, because it's easier in the sense of like at least for me, like when I'm working on my own stuff, like I can be like sometimes like the worst art director to myself, you
yeah,
know. Um, so there's like a little bit of liberation in the sense of like like the story is in my hands, but to an extent it's out of my hands. And so like a little bit of the thinking is kind of taken out of the process. It's more intimidating because it's like you want to honor, like if you're working with a really good story, it's like you want to honor that story, you know? And in this case, I can tell you like, it's like the script was so good that I've talked to my sister for years about like, we need to make this, like we need to actually make this real, because it's like a really good script, and like, you know, it'd make a great graphic novel. And we've talked about it. And like, when I even told my literary agent about it, I could kind of sense like she's a really cool person, but it's like, you know, like everybody's had that moment where it's like, oh, my son draws, you know, and you're like expecting like maybe they draw okay, maybe not, like, you know, but like, so like I'm sure like literary agents are used to somebody being like, oh, you should check out my siblings stuff, you know. But in this case, I was like guaranteeing her, I'm like, no, this is like actually like, I think if you look at this, you'll understand. Like, it's not, this isn't like just because it's a relative or a friend. Like, this is sincerely something that like, if you don't represent, someone's going to, and it's brilliant. Like, and then she saw it and like instantly was like, oh yeah, we're signing like her, because like this is genius, you know. So I feel really good about it because of that. Because like it really is like, now that the ball's in my court, it's kind of my thing to like destroy or to honor. But there's not really much I can, there's not much I could improve with the script, you know? So I'm hoping I can just make it as good as the script, like, you know, to complement it, as opposed to like, I don't want to bring it down. I don't want it to be one of those scenarios where somebody looks at it and they're like, hey, it's a really great script, but holy crap, could they have gotten a different artist, you know? Like, yeah. So
that's what
like,
I'm kind of worried with the just this comic that it's already going to print, because it's the first 3 mini comics, and like the art is like, you can see the stages where it's improving, but like it might just be me like being my own critic, but like, oh man, like I really hope like it's at least decent enough that people would want to check out when Warbanker 7 does come out, or some of my other stuff. Or they'll at least they'll recommend the comic, that people will like it enough. Because I'm like, oh man, that first mini comic wasn't that great in art, but I think it got better in the second one. So, but
yeah, and you get better as you go, you know. I think one of the things that like I found to be a really good bar is this is something I learned like when I was in school for like illustration, right? Like one of the big tricks to illustration is like learning this strange like ability to kind of gauge when something's finished. And like to kind of like almost like push yourself to a level where you're making something that could be a product. Like you're not giving your like, and don't get me wrong, you shouldn't be too hard on yourself, especially as you're learning, right? But it's like kind of learning to like objectively step back and be like, hey, could this be something, like if I were a client, would I pay for this, right? Would I put money on the line for this? Would I take the risk of like putting this on a shelf to sell it? And it's like, if you could do that, like if it's something where you might actually, even if you weren't you, right, like you might spend money on it, that's a good place to be. If you're at a point where you like, you know, you step outside of yourself and you look at it and you go like, yeah, you know, I don't know if I'd like, if I weren't personally connected to this, I don't know if I would invest my own money into it, you know. Then like maybe it's a time to like reassess and kind of improve. And again, it's like a fine line, right? Because especially when you're learning or you're trying your first stuff, it's like you also like, you know, we've talked about this multiple times, but it's important to just like kind of like make stuff, like, because the process of making stuff, you're just naturally going to get better at it.
Yeah.
So, it's a fine line where it's like, you don't want to be like, I mean, obviously no one starts where they want to be,
Yeah.
and even as you get better, like, you're never happy with where you are. Like, you're always going to have room for improvement. Like, that's just the journey of being an artist. But like, the hard part is like finding that level of finish where you're like, this could be a skateboard, and not like a skateboard that like, oh, like, I like this skateboard because I made it, but like a
Yeah.
skateboard that like I could see at a store, and I could see people stopping and going, yeah, I'm buying that skateboard. And it's a weird, man, sorry, I'm rambling, Frank. It's just an interesting
Yeah.
topic. But it's a
Yeah.
weird
No.
it's a weird place that's hard to train yourself to learn how to recognize, where you're like,
Yeah.
but I think when you're, I think when someone's not there, like, they know it. Like, they know it deep down, right?
Yeah.
And again, like, that shouldn't be something to like prevent making, but it's like, it's just like, when you have that like thought, it's like a good sign, like, okay, I like you were describing, where you're like, hey, I got this good script, it's time to like level up.
Yeah.
um and similarly, like, I have those moments all the time where I'm like, I'm having to gauge, like, is this something, that I'd like. Philip said, oh, he was saying he had to do something like the scanning in fourths when I was talking about the scanning.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and Philip, if you're still watching and stuff, what are you working on, man? I know Philip creates stuff too, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Anyhow, yeah. So but it is intimidating, and it's like, you do want to honor other people,
Yeah.
especially stuff they put time into. It's like, I want to honor what uh what my sister spent a lot of time creating. It's really good.
Yes.
And it's funny because, like, I don't know if we're gonna. I guess we'll find out from our publisher if they want to do the angle of like we're related, or if people will just have no idea that like we're siblings, because we have different
Yeah.
last names. So it's like,
Yeah.
for people could very well not know if they didn't want to play up that angle. I would think that's probably a marketable thing, but I don't know. We'll have to
Yeah.
see.
A brother and sister team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm excited about it though. And I like the publisher. I like that they actually do, other Browning stuff. So they've actually published like Elizabeth Barrett Browning books. So they know how to like market them, which is,
Yeah.
that's like, I don't know, that's a cool thing. Yeah. But it was funny because it's like I was filled with excitement and dread when I got the email that they finished. But anyhow, so yeah, good publisher though, West Margin. I'm excited about it.
Okay.
So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But at this point, I'm just trying to get this page done and not think too much about the impending doom.
Yeah, that's how I was with the Captain Guy was an Escoman comic, that because I know there was other, like, oh, I want to work on Warp Anchor 7,
Yeah.
but I would have focused all my time on it, and right now my time is not focused on it. So like,
Yeah.
I want to finish this, and it was and then like, okay, now it's in the hands of the printers. So like,
Yes.
uh, so like, oh, okay, cool, now I can work on some other stuff. And so yeah, so I'll be working on like character designs and upping the Anna had like done some redesigns and some suggestions for Captain Goggles and also for Masculine. So like,
Nice.
okay, cool. Now it's like learning to draw those new styles.
That'll be good though. I think like that's a good exercise.
Yeah.
Philip said, I'm actually in the early stages of writing and illustrating a children's book. Unfortunately, my part-time job has been taking up most of my time. Yeah. The work-life thing is hard. Um, it's a weird thing, and like even when you start getting pretty good at like making the time, you still have to kind of like really monitor your own where you're at, because like for me, part of why on these streams I'm like I have a hard out at like 2, right?
Yeah.
Is like when I'm done drawing, I still need like a moment to wind down.
Yeah.
Like it's like the act of creation at first can be hard to get in the zone, but like once you're in that zone, it's like the thing they talk about in like the War of Art, right? Where it's like you kind of open the floodgates for the muses by showing up, like, and so like once you get hit by the muse, like you can start just like getting in a zone and you're like putting out pages, and it's like then the battle isn't like getting to the artboard, but it's more like how do I separate myself from the artboard without like completely like burning out because I'm going to stay up till like like it becomes the opposite problem of like, oh man, how am I going to force myself to sit down and draw? And that's where like that work-life balance stuff is really hard. So that's why I have like a little like I have a really built habit where I tend to work every night on comics for like a good chunk of hours. So it's like usually about like 9 to like 2 in the morning. So 10, 11, 12, 1, 2. So a good 5 hours a day. And that's on top of like, just working 8 hours a day. Right. And then commuting 2 hours a day. So it's like a good 15 hours of my day is pretty much spent working on art. In order to maintain that, I can't ride that too far, because if that becomes 16 or 20, it might give me results one night, but then like I'm going to pay for those results for like the preceding 3 nights.
Yeah. So, that's where I've been too.
Yeah. So it's you kind of figure it out, and then you're always, I've talked about this with Corey too, but it's like we're kind of always riding that line where you're productive, you're able to kind of have a work-life thing, but you're just pushing yourself, like you're kind of skating that line of burnout like constantly. And it's like you don't want to be in burnout, but you also want momentum. And so it's like you don't want to slow momentum, but you don't want to burn out. So it's like this, I don't know, for me, I find that it's like a really fine balance. And I, every once in a while I don't hit it.
Yeah. It's almost like it's a drug and you're trying to balance life on that drug and regular life. You're like, oh, I don't want to crash. I want to keep this going, but I don't want it to interrupt my regular life.
Yes.
So it's like,
no, that's a really good, I mean, it's the beauty of it is like, unlike drugs, you end up with something pretty cool.
Yeah,
right.
And that's the thing.
Like,
I'm not promoting drug use, like drug.
But I have joked that like comics are kind of like a drug habit, in the sense of like,
no,
it's
I totally see it. Like, I have to do it.
And I've joked that like when I'm telling other people they need to work on comics, it's like I feel like a drug pusher, because I'm like, I don't know if you should wish comics on people. Like it's a lot of work, and it's strangely very addictive to do, and they're beautiful things, but like there's not always a huge monetary return. And they're really hard, like harder than any art thing. Like I've done illustration professionally. I've illustrated books before, and it's like there's something about the sequential page that like of comics that's just like it's tenfold. Like it's just a crazy challenge. So it's definitely, Frank. I agree with that. But it's a weird thing where you have to really monitor your health, and especially if once, like the first challenge is like, how do you make the time, right? The second challenge is the self-discipline. Like once you make the time once, it's possible, right? And so it's the self-discipline to sit down and make the time again and make it consistent. And then the third challenge becomes setting like first off setting like something small, like maybe like the hundreds where you do like 30 minutes a day. That's maybe the third challenge. Fourth challenge is like expanding that. Like, is 30 minutes enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the fifth and final challenge is like now you like once you have it as a habit, like once it's a thing that you can't just wait to sit down and do, um, how do you limit it to where the rest of life is functional? Like, right, you don't want it to get in the way of being able to eat.
Yeah.
You don't want to get in the way of being able to be a good dad or like a good husband. Like, and so yeah, it's like finding this weird line. And then the tough thing is, every once in a while you're gonna screw up. Like you're gonna have a day where you go too far and you burn out, or you're gonna have days where, hey, I'm a great cartoonist today, I'm a great dad today, but hey, like the other day I like screwed up. Like my wife asked me to take out the trash or something, and I got kind of short about it, or you know what I mean, like something really stupid, and you'll fail at that one thing, and then the next day you'll be like a perfect husband and a great father and a bad cartoonist,
Yeah.
and the next day you'll be, you know, like great at your job, but then like everything else falls apart. It's like anything in life, you know, where it's like you're not always going to succeed. That's kind of part of the process. um,
Yeah.
and just learning from your failures and adapting. um, and then again also just accepting that like art isn't this clean thing. Like I've never met an artist who like had time. I haven't. And the weird thing is the artists that have time that I know are like always overloading their time. Like it's just a weird, I don't know. I don't know what this creative thing is. But anyhow, uh
Okay.
needless to say, Philip, I relate. I relate. Time is hard to make. And honestly, I think there are people who, and I've said this before, like when we were doing the 48-hour art check and stuff, like there are times where you just don't have time and maybe you can't be a cartoonist for that moment, you know?
Yeah.
That's okay. You know, like if it's a choice between like being a good dad and being a cartoonist, like be a good dad. Like that has more impact
Yeah.
on the universe, you know? Um, uh, what was this? Philip was saying, I've been called into work to cover shifts so much the last 2 months that I barely had time to work on it. Yeah, yeah, and that's tough, you know. But you know, like it again, like I don't know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Like I think it was uh, last year. I went to go visit my kids during October, and I was in Inktober, and I was like, I'm just gonna do it for the first few days, and then I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna go see my kids. I'm not gonna worry about like, oh, I need to draw something today. Like I'm gonna spend time with my kids. And I still drew with them over there, but it wasn't like,
yeah,
oh, I need to draw this or else I can't call myself a cartoonist or I can.
yeah.
It's like I'm gonna spend time with the kids. Like the comic can wait. The cartoons can wait. So like,
Yeah, and I mean it's like, you know, it's so I usually don't get home till like 6:30 ish, right?
yeah,
And so by the time I'm home, like even quite often it's a little later. So I often don't even get home in time for like everybody to eat with me, right? Because I'm
yeah,
not gonna make my family like starve so we can all eat together. You know, like that's just I do think it's a good thing if you can, like as a family, to have like family meals. Like that's really
yeah,
that has a lot of benefits for like people socially and like all sorts of stuff. But but it's like there's one non-negotiable that, and again, like anything, like every once in a while I don't get to hit this. Like a case in point is like the last 2 days actually have been a time where I didn't hit this mark. But in general, pretty often, like what I consider non-negotiable is like I read with my son every night. Like every night I'm going to sit down with him and read books to him. Every single night. Like I that's one of my goals, because he needs time with his dad, and reading to your kid is like one of the best things you can do. And we have a lot of fun, you know? So we read together and I pray with him every single night as much as I can. There's occasional nights where I'm like physically exhausted and my wife will like step in, you know? But like that's something I try to like really treat with respect, you know, and force myself to do, even if I don't feel like it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's had like, that's been a real benefit for me, you know, just that like that little window of time. It's a nice reset for me too. It clears my head of the day. You know, cause my kid's pretty fun, you know, like, and he's funny and I have to like, you know, I enjoy it actually. It's like having to read like Captain Underpants. Right now that's the thing, because we ran out of Dogman books. Those books are funny as hell. Like, and then seeing his enjoyment of them, you know. So I don't know. I'm rambling, but I'm just saying, like, yeah, it's like there's times where you got to do that, you know, like, and that might be more important than any book I could ever write, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there's also times where it's like just feasibly to get the book that you know, the script is done, like I'm literally not going to have any weekends. Like I every weekend from now on, like whether it's a trip or whatever, it's like maybe that's an exaggeration. Maybe there will be like one or two where I can get out, but like in general, I need to just like, it's Saturday, you know, I'm cranking out comic pages. It's Sunday, I'm cranking out comic pages, you know. But what was it when we had Richard Fairgray on? Like I loved his example of like how he describes cartooning to people. People who were like, you know, what's it like to be a cartoonist? And he kind of like makes this example of like getting a book deal, and then he's bound to his desk. He can't leave. He has to figure out snacks that he can have without leaving the art table. Like he has to cancel plans with people. It's like this whole crazy story that he tells. And then people are like, oh, that must be horrible. And he's like, are you kidding? This is like heaven. You know, like, there is a part of me that like, dreads the commitment of it, but also I'm really excited because that's kind of what I want to do, you know? So I don't know. Sorry, Frank. That's been a long rant. I ramble, Frank. I ramble.
No, I don't think that was rambling.
Okay.
That was a cohesive thought.
Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud about it, but you know, it's like the other thing is like I was talking about with the arc thing or whatever. It's like I think if God like gives you something really cool, you really need to like be a good steward of it. Like if God's gonna entrust me with like a cool publishing deal, I need to like do my best to like honor that. And then obviously the rest is kind of up to God, but it's like, you know, I don't want to be like some spoiled brat who's just like, oh, you've given me this gift, but I'm not going to work for it, you know, or I don't know. And also I am kind of, I don't know. I'm glad, like, I feel like I'm equipped for it. Like, I feel like I'm at the right age to be able to take it the right way, you know? So I don't know. We'll see. And here's the thing, unlike, you know, stuff like, okay, so you do like a co-creator project like this, right? And you're kind of in the same deal as the writer. So there's benefits and negatives of that. Like the negative is if you do this like at a page rate, even as meager as like comic book pay is, right? Comic book pay is pretty bad per page. But if you do it at a page rate, like quite often, like that's your sort of work for hire in most of those cases. So it's like you have a certain amount of rights, but you're not going to get like an equal cut to like the guy who's like get doing the book, for a bigger cut of royalties, but a small advance, right? But in this scenario, as an illustrator, for instance, if I didn't really believe in this script or whatever, and whatnot, I would just charge a page rate, and I'd be way more compensated, and it's less risk for me. So the risk of doing something like this is you can spend years on a project that you have the same risk as the writer, where it's dude, you could spend years on this and just get nothing for it, maybe it doesn't even make back the advance. That's the risk that writers deal with. And so when you're in the co-creator realm, you're kind of taking on that risk as well, right? But the reward's really great because let's say it got a book deal, or a movie deal, or it starts selling like crazy, you're getting the same cut as the writer, and so it's again, you take this short-term loss for a risk that you think is worth it. I think that's cool, but you want to make sure you really believe in that thing if you're going to commit years to something, so because to me, I feel okay, either way, for me, it's I get so much good out of this regardless of how this book that is coming down the pipe is going to do. One good is I think that it's a really good story, and it needs to be told. So worst case scenario, the story gets told. That's good, right? Other worst case scenarios, we end up with a good book, a beautiful book that no one buys. I'm okay with that result. At least now. Maybe talk to me in a year when I'm in the thick of it, and maybe I'll be I hate everything,
I hate this book.
Yeah. I don't think I'll hate it though. I love the story, so I think it'll be more this situation's tough, Kind of like if you're in the middle of a marathon where you're every once in a while when you're in the middle of a marathon, you might be why did I start this thing when you're at the halfway point? I got to go the whole other way. But overall, I kind of know what I'm getting into, I think. So yeah, rambling, but still thinking out loud. I got to stop saying rambling because
I don't think it's rambling. It's a conversation.
Yeah. Truth. Okay, Frank.
I'm just listening right now, but that's because I'm listening, but I'm also working on it.
Well, that's the point of the stream. We just kind of hanging out, working on art, shooting the breeze. Speaking of, my internal clock let me know that it's an hour, so I'm gonna disappear for a second. Cool. Why don't you let people?
I'll talk.
Yeah. Well, Frank, why don't you look? You already know the spiel, so it's a good time to drop your products and stuff. And also, I just want to say thank you to anybody who's watching live. I know there's a few people watching who aren't chiming in the chats, and I appreciate that. And then I definitely Philip. It's cool to have you in the chats, and it's fun to have folks hanging out. I hope you guys are getting art done. That's one thing I'll say. If you're an artist and you're listening, if you're just kind of listening, you have it casually in the background, that's great. But if you're an artist, I hope these things are inspiring you. Kind of like we were talking about on Artcasters today. Yes. It's I think that being around or listening to other artists who are making stuff can be really a good fuel to kind of be in the background while you're going. So anyhow, with that being said, Frank, I'll be right back and drop your stuff.
All right, cool. All right, guys. So you can find my stuff if you don't know who I am, Frank Salazar, and you can find me on Salazar Art Nation on YouTube and on Instagram. And there is a link in those two places, so you can go to my Etsy store on Salazar Nation Comics. So I got some mini comics there. I'm gonna be putting some more stuff up there pretty soon. You can also find the digital versions of those comics on my Gumroad. That's also Salazar Nation Comics. And if you just want to support, you like what I do, You can drop me a tip on my Coffee account or on my PayPal, and those links are in my videos and link trees and all that.
I love it. I actually forgot to mention this. Frank, you got to get on my case when I don't mention this too. Because I do take super chats. And I keep forgetting to mention it. But now that the channel is monetized, you can support the channel by doing a super chat. So if you want to like just give a tip, even if it's like $1 or whatever, helps out the channel. And it helps me, make these things too. And I only mention that because I forget to mention it. And it's kind of cool. And like some people have done it, which is kind of rad. But I'm throwing that out there. But I also I want to say Frank's minis are really cool, and you guys should like check out Frank's stuff. The other thing I like about when you order from Frank is like he really puts a lot of thought and care into like the packages. Often there's like a handwritten note, there's extras. I'm not promising anything. I'm just saying like most of the time, everyone I know
Most of the time,
yeah. Frank puts a lot of care into what he does. So, you know what I was thinking of while I was like out taking my little 2-second break or whatever, was like the fact that like I held off for a lot of years on making comics. And one of the biggest things that was preventing me from like really finishing a comic, like, and finishing it to the best of my ability was the fact of like I was afraid of it. And not only that, but it just was impossible. Like when I thought about a comic, even after like getting a degree in illustration and stuff, I was just like the undertaking of making a good comic book. I just thought like that's for other people. Like it's like it's just like this weird, magical, mystical thing that I just can't unlock. And once I unlock it, once I figure it out, it's kind of like the time thing we were talking about, where it's like I would be like, when the time is right, when I have all the right knowledge and stuff. And one of the things that broke that was just realizing that like it's just never going to happen. Like it's always going to be impossible. And sort of accepting that and being like, well, I'm going to give it a shot. So I guess my point for bringing that up is like, one thing I've gotten really comfortable with as an art director is like quite often being put in a situation where a client wants something on a timeline that's ridiculous, that like we don't have, like it's just not possible, right?
Yeah.
And trying to think, okay, how can that be possible? Because I have to say yes to this. So how do I make that possible? And then taking this crazy impossible task and like breaking it down, like going, okay, what are like, and Corey's talked about this, but it's like back planning, right? Where you're like, okay, what's the end goal? And then from like the end goal being like, okay, what do I need to do before that? Okay, what do I need to do before that? And just kind of work your way backwards, right?
Yeah.
Almost like looking at like a basketball hoop and being like, how do I get this ball into the hoop? Like it seems impossible, right?
Yeah.
You're kind of like, you're thinking, okay, what do I need to do? Okay, well, I need to like angle my arm in a different way, because when I do it this way, it's not getting the result I want. So maybe I need to practice this many times a week. Like you start back planning, and then the weird thing is the impossible becomes kind of possible. And you do that enough. And I don't want to sound like some hokey inspirational person, because like, there's always the possibility you do it a bunch and you just can't, like, you're just not going to make a shot. Like you just suck at basketball, like that's always possible. And even that might be why like a lot of people will kind of hold off on more ambitious stuff or like leveling up in art, because like there is always that risk that like you do it and it just sucks. Like You know, there's that, like, it's fun to be in the fantasy of being like, I'm a star basketball player and I've
Yeah.
never played basketball, you know, but I know if I played basketball, I'd be like the best basketball player, right? That's a fun
Mhm.
fantasy to live in. You can watch games and be like, dude, that guy's shot is so off. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so much better of a basketball player. But like, really, like, you know, my point is, like, I guess that's part of like how it happens is like you have to kind of take the impossible, which is like a book, like an illustrated book is impossible.
Yeah.
If you think about it as just a whole, it is insane that people make illustrated books, even kids books, or like short pamphlets or what, or zines or whatever. It's like, if you think about it, it's just, as a whole, it's a stupidly impossible thing. Um, but then if you break it down, like, it's not like, it's like, okay, I can't do a whole page, but could I draw like one panel that looks good?
Yeah.
Right? That's a lot more doable. And then you just get in this I don't know. I've gotten to the point where I get in the practice of it. So even doing this page that I'm doing right now, I'm like, I'm cognizant of the whole, but I'm taking it a chunk at a time, you know? And it's like I'm taking my time with each little section, and then before you know it, I've done a page that, like, I'd look at and be like, that's, you know, I can't do that page, but I can do the page. I just have to break it down into like little sections, you know? So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
rambling, but I think that's how it happens, you know? You just kind of
Yeah.
decide, okay, no, I'm going to do it, and here are the steps I'm going to do it, and then follow those steps, you know? I don't know.
Yes.
Is that profound or just obvious? I don't know.
Well, I mean, for us, it's obvious, but like for someone not in the know, it's profound.
But it's also like one of those basic things that I have to remind myself of. Like, so, you know, again, like, it's one thing to be like, okay, I'm going to make this thing on my timeline. It's another to be like, I'm
Yeah.
going to agree to do 230 pages in a
Yeah.
year, you know? Um, and that's how I'm going to deal with it. That's how I'm going to get it
Yeah.
done. To me right now, it seems impossible, but I've done the impossible enough times to be like, it's possible. It's just like, how have I done the impossible in the past, you know?
Yeah.
And each time it felt insane and impossible, and it's just, I can't do it. And then also, I'd say, like, that's where faith comes in too, and not blind faith, or, you know, like, blind faith is like the, I'm not going to take my medication because God's going to heal me. That can be a real problem, right? Because it's like, I'm just saying that because I had a grandparent. One of my grandparents was that, like, probably died a lot earlier than they needed to because of that, right? They were
Yeah.
like, I trust that God's going to heal me, so I'm not going to take, like, and they took it to the extreme. Like, they wouldn't take like aspirin, you know, for like a headache, because they're like, God's going to heal my headache. And that's not necessary. I don't know if that's the kind of faith God's like asking us to do. I think it's more like just having faith that, like, God's not going to give you more than you can handle. So if God's intention is for you to, and I know this, like, to people who don't believe, this probably sounds like a delusion, but hey, maybe it's a powerful delusion. I don't know. But for me, it's like, it's more of a practice of just being like, look, God's not going to give me something I can't handle. And if he wants me to finish something, or he wants me to be able to achieve something, um, there's going to be a feasible pathway, right? Like, he's going to open doors. Like, he's not going to just slam door. Like, to me, a good sign God isn't leading you somewhere is if doors are just constantly slammed, right?
Yeah.
Maybe so. Anyhow, but also just trusting in faith that, like, God can get you through things, and he can make things that are impossible possible. And that gives me comfort, but it also doesn't take the responsibility off of me to, like, back plan and try to see how to, like, what part can I play to allow this to happen, right? So I don't know. That's the trick. I I haven't perfected, but that's the trick, I think. you know.
Yeah.
I mean, my sister was talking about like the writing process because I think it's one of the first time, like she's worked with editors. She was an editor, like she was a newspaper editor, right? For like an entertainment section in our local area for like over a decade. That was her day job, was like to review movies and like edit the entertainment section of the newspaper. And yet it's her first time working with an editor for like a book, right?
Yeah.
And she was talking about how it's weird when you're writing a story and you're in the editing process. There's like this point halfway where you feel like you have just this chaotic mess and that like there's no way out. Like you feel like you're like in the deep end of a pool and you're just like, oh crap, I'm going to drown, you know?
Yeah.
And then this weird thing happens when you keep carving at it where it just kind of starts forming. Like, and like suddenly like these things that seemed impossible just start kind of happening. And a lot of that's just that weird, again, like the same technique where you're just, yeah. But not everything in life is technique, you know, and like, I don't know. But it's something I've been thinking about, you know, because it's like, again, I might be deluded, but I think it's possible to get this book done. I think not this book in a year, but like, I think the style is more accommodating for like quicker turnarounds without costing quality, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's another key is like, I really want to be clear when I'm saying like, I think people who've seen the style too, like would know it's like, it doesn't look cheaper, right? It still has that level that I was talking about that I've tried to train myself to do where it's like, it looks finished, you know? It's just like not like using tons of cross hatching and um, it's got more of like it's just a style that can be effectively brought to a finish quicker, but it's not like, I don't think it's suffering because of that. It just fits the story better that way, you know. So yeah, anyhow, I'm excited about it, so I'm rambling. And then Philip said, I've got Procreate open doing some test sketches. Hell yeah, Philip. That's what I'm talking about.
Good job, Philip.
Yeah, dude.
You fought resistance.
You fought the law and you're winning. So you can like do a cover song of that. Oh my gosh. I was trying to make a coherent joke and this is where the like 1 a.m. kicks in.
You fought the law and you won. So speaking of leveling up, I did a sketch card today because I promised this little girl that I would make her a sketch card of Mask Woman. So I did it uh, on digital. Like I practiced on digital pencils and like, oh, I like this, print it
Yeah.
out. So I made copies. So, but I left it as a rough digital pencil so I could ink it and color it. So I already put that aside. When I see her and her dad, I'll give that to her. But I made some extra copies, and it's Mask Woman. So I was trying something out. So here's the one that I kept. So I don't know if you can see it, but the antennas are actually cut out and glued on here.
Oh,
So it has
cool.
a little 3D. But what I wanted to do was make them move, but I made it too small. So I enlarged it and I did what I wanted to do. So I added brackets. So they are
Nice. So it's movable.
yeah.
That's fun, man.
So it also looks like she's wearing like goggles over her mask.
That's kind of awesome.
So an interactive card.
I like it. I like it, man.
I got an extra copy over here because I wasn't sure. So yeah, I have the template here.
So how is everything, Frank? Like making some progress?
Yeah, I mean, got these cards done. That comic is. I'm not stressing about it. I'll leave it to the printers. And also right now I'm doing a practice sketch also because um, I was commissioned to do a painting, and it's not due to sometime in April, but like a lot of this stuff just took a lot took precedence. So I did some practice sketches. So I'm gonna be doing the tomb of the empty tomb of Jesus, but they wanted a specific one that they saw online, and so like okay, so I looked at pictures because I don't want to do it exactly,
Yeah.
but like okay, I saw two that I liked and one that they had pointed out, so like okay, there's not really that many different ways I could do it, but uh, I'm gonna give it a shot. So like that's what I'm working on now. Um,
Cool. That's rad. I
and
uh
and then I'll turn it into a painting.
I like that. I am like kind of getting in the zone. It's weird. Gary was talking about like I think he said I was like a 10 for like if you have like 1 out of 10, 10 being like totally capable or whatever. He was like,
Yeah.
and he's like, Josh, I bet you're a 10. Like this was on Artcasters for like being able to talk and draw at the same time. And I was like, actually, I'm kind of. It's weird. Like what I talked about it, but it's like inking I can do, but drawing
Yeah.
I get like super. Like I'll draw like a hippopotamus when I'm meaning to draw like an elephant. When I'm talking and drawing. So unless I'm like, if I'm life drawing, I can do that and like feel so relaxed. Like and I think that's just like a muscle kind of thing. But like for me, life drawing is just super fun. Like if we were, sitting at a restaurant or whatever, um, and chatting, and I'm like life drawing, I can do that. Like, just again, that feels like inking. But drawing comic panels, it's like I don't know. I need
Yeah.
like I need time and focus and
Yeah. I'm just in the chats I had put like right like doing the lettering, which is just like usually just like the font and stuff.
yeah,
Like I can't I was like, oh, I'm gonna finish lettering this the Texas Freeze comic because that's all I needed, just the lettering, just
yeah,
doing the fonts. I'll do that while listening to the archives, and I can't.
yeah,
I'm there in the chats, I'm listening, I'm typing. I was like, I can't
yeah.
work on the lettering or the writing
Yeah, I've
uh
definitely had those times
while typing.
where I've tried to like listen to podcasts while I'm writing and then literally found myself writing the podcast, like writing what I'm
Yeah,
hearing on the podcast. Like you
that's what I said. Like my comic would just be Jim Luhan quotes
yeah,
if I started just listening and writing because I would just be like, and then Jim said, "Come,
yeah,
Capiz,
yeah, I'm
get your name out
definitely,
of my mouth."
yeah. Which again, like I know Jim was saying it's like based on a different internet meme, but I think he's
Yeah.
holding something back. I think Jim Luhan is actually
Uh,
psychic. And I think that everyone watching this should at some point watch Lars Lazarus and let me know. Do you think that that is autobiographical and that Jim is actually psychic, or do you
might
think
be
it's
loosely based on
yeah?
true events.
We're just kind of joking. For anybody who hasn't watched like the latest streams or whatever, there's an on-running bit that Jim was doing prior to the whole Oscar shenanigans that everybody knows about now, with the slap and all that.
Yeah.
Where Jim, for like some reason in the last like week, and here's the thing: if it's an internet meme, it's just hilarious timing because like literally like a week before that happened, Jim just nonstop was doing a bit where he's like, "Get your name out my mouth," or "Get your name out your
My
mouth,
name out of your
my
mouth.
name out your mouth," and he was doing that over and over again for like just the last week.
Yeah.
Not before that. not after. Well,
He
just
did it on the last Artcasters.
yeah. So you can watch like the Artcasters before the one I missed with Lonnie Millsap, which you guys should watch because Lonnie is like a wealth of awesome. And very inspiring dude too. But anyhow, like yeah, he was doing that bit throughout that entire Artcasters, and it's like, and then when Will Smith did his thing, he actually said like, "Get my wife's name out your mouth." Like it was just weird timing, is all. So we've been joking that Jim is like psychic. That's the joke that we've been going. But then is it a joke? That's for you guys to decide. Also, Jim's done Lars Lazarus, which is about a psychic. And so, again, just kind of interesting. I'm pretty excited, man. I think I might hit my mark because my goal was like, I want to finish these 2 panels by 2 for 2 stories. See all those 2s?
For 2 stories, 2 by 2.
And I think I might make it. Because right now I'm just having to hatch the rest of this bed. So, okay, here's one, like a weird thing. The panel I'm working on, this is an example of like a nerdy thing that like not all cartoonists do, but I think they should. It's the same exact shot, right? And there's one mild difference where the stomach is rising and then falling. Yeah. And it's like it's almost like exactly the same image, same background, everything. I'm redrawing what could just be copied and pasted. Yeah. That's a weird thing I started doing, and I love doing it. I don't like just copying, pasting. So yeah. So I think everybody should do that. Basically, just to pointlessly spend more time on something they could do quickly.
Yeah, sometimes it's just easier to copy. It depends. Because there are times where I've done it like, oh, I can just like copy this, put it here, but I'll change it a little bit. And there's times like, you know what, I'm gonna redraw it. So
yeah, it's gonna be interesting because I definitely like when I'm on the clock and working somewhere, and especially if I'm working digitally, and especially if it's like more vector based stuff where it doesn't look all like hand done and stuff. I'm gonna like copy and paste the crap out of everything, You use every trick you can in the book to like get stuff done on deadline. It'll be interesting to see how much I can hold to that thing, because I am going to be hand lettering this comic too. Okay. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see when push comes to shove, like how true I stay to that, or if I end up using like a lot of cut and paste backgrounds. I guess you guys will have to see. Can hold me to it and be like, when you're 100 pages in, you aren't really holding your standards there. Because this one, it's like, okay, that's feasible. Because again, it's kind of on a little bit of my own timeline. Yeah, but it'll be interesting when the heat's on to see how much of my my little nuances like I hold to. Philip was saying it's actually near 4 a.m. and I got to turn in now. Oh, and he said I wasn't even paying attention to the time. Well, that's cool. I'm glad we helped you lose track of time and make some art. Philip, thanks for tuning in. Yeah. We appreciate it, and good luck to you, buddy. I hope you're able to get that project going, but not at the cost of your sanity or livelihood, right? Yeah. So that's because I do feel like there's some people who are like just like kind of almost like disregard that too, sometimes I can do that.
Yeah.
To myself, where I'm like, I have to remind myself like it's okay to like take a lunch break, you know. Like, speaking
Yeah.
of,
Eat.
I gotta get a refill of coffee. I know it's not the hour mark, but I'm noticing I'm starting to get wonky on lines. Be right back.
All right. Cool. Okay. It's not bad. Let me check chats.
So, Frank, have we ever talked about Jokleys?
Jokely?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. Doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, so I feel like we're about the same age.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're
I think we've
roughly.
established that. I think we're around the
Yeah.
same age. And like when I was a kid, you know, I wasn't like super poor, but you know, there was a point where like my family was not like at least in the tax bracket of middle class. I'm careful to say like growing up poor because it's like poor by like American standards is pretty wealthy, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. It's like if I were talking to somebody in like Uganda and saying I grew up poor and they're like, "Oh, you like had dysentery or like, you know, like I don't know if that makes sense." It's like there's different levels, but we still weren't like really well off like for a while. And there was a point in time where we were like, you know, a family of 5 like living in like a 2-bedroom apartment or a single bedroom apartment. And before that, like living with my aunt because we couldn't afford, you know, our own place. And at that time, like there was this huge trend. Like that's when like Oakleys hit. Like I think they were like completely new, or if they weren't new, it's like the first time they were like a trend, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I was finally at that point in like elementary school where like trends were like starting to be a thing. So like everybody, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting what it is. It's like that shirt with the alligator on it,
Yeah. Yeah. What's it? Not
like
lacrosse or
Lacoste, I think.
Lacoste? Yeah.
Yeah, but like that was like the cool thing, and all the kids at school had the Lacoste thing, and I had like the weird knockoff Lacoste thing, you know, that we could get at like a cheap place. And I remember being really excited because I got a pair of Jokleys, which I didn't know were called Jokleys, because Oakleys were like a huge thing. And this is like
Yeah.
when they were a brand new company. And so old Oakleys, I have the bully in 2 Stories book 1, like wearing Oakleys. It's that
Okay.
Oakley that had like I think they were called like waves or something. I wasn't in touch enough with like the hip stuff,
Yeah.
but it was like that Oakley that like was like a visor, but then it had like a V on the side. And then
Okay.
they were like these really cool things for a kid because it was like one of the first pairs of sunglasses where you could like change out, like you could change the frame, you know, like you could pull out the frame and like pop your sunglasses in a different frame. Um,
Oh, cool.
but yeah, the side just looked like this, like right, and then it had like in retrospect, they're pretty stupid looking sunglasses here, but that's kind of what they looked like, right? That
Yeah.
okay. So I got a pair that looked exactly like that, and they even had like the V. They kind of looked like it was really close to actual Oakleys. And I remember like putting them on and being all excited. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go to school and like I'm gonna be the cool kid, you know, I'm wearing the thing, you know, the cool thing. And I remember for like a week not being able to live that down because like the second I arrived, this is like a 2-story style story, which is sad, but that's my childhood. I was a nerd, a poor nerd. Um, and so I remember showing up to school and then for like a week in class, just people being like, this idiot with his jokelies. Like, and usually they were kind of rich kids, you know, who like probably honestly, like, here's the thing, when you're a kid, that's like mortifying, right? In retrospect, like they must not have been super happy with themselves if they were like finding their identity in like their money, you know? Um, but yeah, I remember just being like teased for about a week about wearing Jokeleys instead of Oakleys because it just didn't count if it wasn't like the thing, you know? I don't know what brought that to mind, but that was something I was just thinking about. Oh, I know what brought it up was I was thinking like, hey, we're about the same age range. Do you remember that terminology or was that just my school, you know?
I've never heard jokes, but
You're like, there's this one time when I was going to school in California and this kid showed up with like Jokeleys and I was like, freaking idiot with his Jokeleys.
because
It's like, that was you, Frank?
Yeah. Yeah, I mocked this kid relentlessly until I left.
You're like, I don't know why. I just felt compelled to like fly to California. Like,
yeah. And he was wearing an Indiana Jones hat one day
nice.
and building, digging for dinosaurs in the sandbox. And like,
yeah.
I talked to this kid. No, you should be control of that.
So here, you know, like what's interesting about that is like then people write stuff for kids, right?
Yeah.
And they forget like what like terrible pieces of crap kids can be. Like, I mean, if you think about it, like most grown adults like aren't like, at least we've been trained not to like clown on somebody like, oh, you're not wearing like, you know, those aren't Adidas, those are fake Adidas or what, you know, like we don't pull that often, even if we think it, like we just don't, you just learn you don't do that. Like that's just kind of a dick move, especially if somebody doesn't have money, you know, like to just be like, oh, well, like for instance, okay, like I really like my guitars, but I don't judge like some kid who's like picking up guitar who can't afford a Gibson for playing like a Squire or like a cheaper guitar. Like you play what you can afford and you know, like if you can play well on like a cheap guitar, like hell yeah, dude. That's amazing, you know? It doesn't say anything about your ability as a guitarist, like the kind of guitar you can buy, right?
Yeah.
We know these things as adults, but like as kids, like there's this weird period, man. I'm a little nervous because my son's getting closer to the age where kids start really being kind of jerks, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, they start pretty early, but it's like, you know, anyhow. So to me, it's like, if you're writing a story for kids, I'm just saying, don't forget like that kids are not like these innocent, like beautiful, perfect little like beings. Like they can be little turds, you know? I honestly think that's why Dave Pilkey's such a good writer. And I know I talk about Dave Pilkey a lot, but my son's super into it. And it's like, I think that's why Captain Underpants is really funny to kids, you know? I mean, they're kind of like the two kids in that story are kind of like like they're troublemakers, you know, like they're little pranksters and they, you know, like, I don't know. It treats kids with respect. Like, I don't know. Anyhow, I don't know why that came into being, but did you guys have anything like that where it was like kids got all like cocky about like their money?
Yeah, with shoes and stuff, like how much shoes cost, and so.
Oh, Pro Wings, man! I never lived down Pro Wings too. When Reebok pumps, were all huge. I had a pair of Pro Wings and I got clowned on all the time. They were like, you can't get the Reeboks. Like,
Yeah,
so, yeah.
remember they would like talk about how much they spent for their shoes, and like I had some shoes that my mom bought used,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, how much? And I guess you could tell they were used, but like they're like, oh, how much did you pay for them? But I never said like, oh, I bought these used. So I was just like going by like, well, when they were bought, they were probably $20. So they're like laughing, those look like you got them off the clothesline. I was like, well, I never said I got them. Like I never said I just got them.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the thing. Like, and but I was concerned about that. Like, oh, I didn't pay that much, or my mom would buy from garage sales, so I want to admit that. But
Yeah.
now I'm like, I don't care, man. I had some pretty decent clothes, and it was
Hell yeah.
like the shoes were like the least ones because like I would just wear shoes out a lot. So, but all my shirts were garage sale shirts, and you couldn't even tell. Like it wasn't like
Yeah.
they were still like in style. So I was like, I had like GI Joe shirts and
Hell
Garfield and
yeah,
all this
dude.
stuff. So I was like, now I look at it, man, it's dumb.
It
Like
is, but you know what's funny is like this is a theme I like to touch on in my stories.
traumatic.
Like even Jacob's apartment like touches on a little bit of this too, where like there's like these little childhood traumas that like follow you like subconsciously throughout your life that like you may not even be thinking about consciously. Like the thing that made me think of Jokeley's recently was I was talking to a coworker and we were talking about clothes, right?
Yeah,
And I was explaining that like the only pair of clothes that I don't mind kind of dropping a little bit of money on, like I wear cheap t-shirts, I wear like jeans that aren't like these, you know, I'm not going to go to like Urban Outfitters to pay like a
yeah,
ridiculous amount of money for jeans that look old. Like I just don't
yeah.
care.
I always think that that's ridiculous. I thought that was a ridiculous trend, but it even started in the 80s, and
Yeah.
even then, I was like, why do
Yeah.
you want jeans to look like they're torn?
And I mean, I'm picky about like the tone of my jean color because there's just a look that I like my jeans to have, but I'm not going to spend an extraordinary amount of money on jeans. The one
Yeah,
thing that I tend to not mind spending a little money on is like I'm very picky about my shoes. And I don't have a ton of pairs of shoes, but when I buy a new pair of shoes, I allow myself to spend a little bit more because
yeah,
there's certain styles of shoes that I like, and then most shoes I can't stand.
yeah,
And we were talking about that. And I was trying to figure out why that is, and I realized that like some of it might literally like I don't feel like it's that way, but it might have
yeah,
something to do with the Pro Wings thing when I was a kid and getting clowned for wearing cheap shoes. Like that might be just somewhere embedded in like my subconscious. And that might be why it's just particularly shoes, you know? I don't know. It's interesting, but I just was realizing like I don't know if I can uncouple those things. Like those might actually be connected. And they might not, but it's interesting that we're all um you know, I don't think anyone got through childhood without something that stuck with them that was, you know, mortifying or you know, like
yeah,
that's what I'm getting at is like we're all like human beings walking around who like are carrying around the baggage of like these strange pasts, you know, of like from like human beings we probably don't even feel that connected to. Like I don't feel um like if I talked to myself when I was 20, I'd be like horrified. Like I'd be like this guy is annoying, like you know, like
yeah,
but it's like but that's a part of you, you know. I don't know, it's an interesting I think it's interesting that we're all carrying these like ghosts with us, you know. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, so that's I think that's what made me think of Jokeley's recently because that conversation happened really recently where I was like, yeah, I it just I don't know how we ended up on it. I think I mentioned the word Pro Wings, and the guy I was talking to kind of grew up in a similar monetary situation. It was like, oh no, man, like that was the worst. because they knew what Pro Wings were. You know, that was like
Yeah.
the cheap Payless shoe that kind of looked passable. And they had a similar kind of trauma from it. And it's funny because they were also equally really picky about their shoes. And we were like, I wonder if that's it. I wonder if that's the reason, you know? Like maybe it's just so buried we just don't realize it, you know?
Yeah.
Because I don't mind, I don't care about name brand anything, but for some reason, shoes, I do.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't judge other people by it. It's just my own personal thing, you know? Like it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was funny. I don't know. But also a good lesson for people who are like writing for kids. Like, don't forget that little kids can be terrible. Like Sendak has a whole great I think you can look it up on YouTube. Sendak talking about how little kids are kind of monsters. And he said, like, because somebody was asking him like the trick to writing such like classic kids books, and he was like, I just remember that kids can be little demons. Like they aren't always these like innocent doves. Like they can be really mean, you know?
Yeah.
And like you kind of need to remember that when you're writing for them, because if you're writing a character that's mean, but they're like dumbed down mean, like a kid who's going to school and sees and deals with like kid mean is just going to be like, oh, you're just like placating, like you're that adult who's like pinching my cheeks because you forget the age that like kids hate their cheeks being pinched, you know?
Yeah.
It's like that, you know, like, and all of us can remember being kids, and you had that one relative who like, you know, they meant well, but they just kind of lost touch with what it is to be a kid, you know?
Yeah.
Or I don't know. I always felt, I don't know. I have a weird thing with that anyhow. So you rocked some G.I. Joe shirts?
Mm-hmm.
Did you
Yeah.
watch the G.I. Joe movie as a kid?
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on it as a kid, and have you watched it since?
Yeah, I watched it like I think again when I was like in my late teens, like 19 or something. But yeah, I saw it as a kid, and cause and it was a little disturbing because like one of my favorite characters like died. It's like they're all dying. I was like, and Cobra Commander turns into a snake.
Dude, okay. Yeah, as a kid, I remember being really excited because it's the G.I. Joe movie, you know?
Yeah.
And like there was nothing cooler at that time than G.I. Joe, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Brianna said,
Transform.
let's see how my timing is today. Hey, how is everyone
Hey,
doing?
Rita.
I feel like Brianna might have that's right. Brianna usually times in like right before we we close out.
Yes,
Well, Brianna, I think you
when we're leaving or when we're
yeah.
talking about murder for some reason.
Oh, that's true. We do need to start talking about, well, we were about to, because we were talking about the G.I. Joe movie
Yeah,
and G.I.
actually,
Joes
yes.
that you
You're
love
just in
dying.
time, Brianna.
Brianna's like, speaking of death, hello. Well, anyhow, we appreciate you, Brianna, showing up, and I think you're actually going to catch a bit of the stream live.
Yeah.
Let us know what you're working on too, or maybe you're just waking up. I have no idea. Let us know what you're up to. Yeah, the GI Joe movie was like, yeah, it was like the coolest thing. I was so excited, and then I remember, what was that character's name? He was like not. He ends up kidnapping Cobra, and he's got like a, oh my gosh,
Did
I can't.
Serpentor?
Yeah, Serpentor. Like suddenly this dude, like, because we all like, here's the thing, like when you're a kid, you know, you get used to a villain. So it's kind of weird if like the best He-Man episodes were like with Skeletor. Like, you know what I mean? It'd feel weird if you were watching He-Man and it's like always a different villain, because you really want that like key villain. And obviously in G.I. Joe, it's like, dude, Cobra's the bad guy, you know? Suddenly the big baddie just got replaced instantly by this guy who's like, I'm a snake-headed guy and I drive like a weird vehicle, and now we're introducing these new characters. And by the way, we're also Echo Warriors now. And you're like, wait, what? Like, what is this? What is this change? Like, I remember just being shocked as a kid. I was like, that it wasn't as traumatic as
Serpento, all these like took you out of it. Like it was like he seemed interesting, but it's like now he's the bad guy. And I was like, why is he in charge now? Like Cobra Commander is like the toughest guy. And then watching the shows again is like there was always infighting with him and Destro, so they would always be betraying each other.
Yeah. But like him and Destro were like the main guys, and the fact that like okay, so here's where it felt kind of like a ripoff, right? At least when I was a kid. Now in retrospect, I've tried to sit through those episodes, and they're pretty bad cartoons. Like they're not that great of cartoons. Like I hate to say it in retrospect. But it's like as a kid, I do remember, I think the fact that this new villain was easily able to just kind of discard the main villain. Yeah. Like I don't think it was that complicated how he got rid of Cobra. I think he just kind of came in and was like, yeah, Cobra, you're gone. And I think it was one of those like, ooh, look, this is a super powerful villain, Yeah. But I remember feeling kind of like, well, I mean, if he's going to take over Cobra's thing, like it should be a little harder than that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, so I'm glad I wasn't alone on that. Like as a kid, I felt both exhilarated and a little disappointed in the movie. What about
Transformers movie? Oh my goodness.
Oh, Transformers movie. That's like one of the first movies I like. I was heartbroken, man. I cried so hard in that movie. I mean, Prime died, and like it was like this heroic, just tragic death, and it's like
he stayed dead for a little bit.
I was bawling, man. I couldn't. That was one of the most traumatic movies I saw as a kid.
Yeah, like, and I remember like it continued because I don't think I saw the movie right away as a kid.
Yeah.
So like I would be watching the cartoon, and then all of a sudden there's Hot Rod and these other characters, which I thought they were cool. But it's like like a big chunk was just like it just went like it like you're missing something. I was like,
well, and Prime doesn't just die, like, and this is why it was so traumatic as a kid. It's like they literally show him like change color.
Yeah.
Like he's like losing his life force and you're watching it. It's like if this sequence, which is a book for adults, was in a children's cartoon. Like
yeah, he's on his deathbed.
Totally.
And he's like
I mean, yeah.
And there's gray and
yeah, it was that one stuck with me, man. Yeah. I'm trying to think of like movie disappointments around. Okay. Do you remember what was it called? I think it was called either The Wiz or The Wizard.
Well, there's two movies like that. So there's The Wizard with Fred Savage, where it's
that's the one that I mean.
They're gonna play the video game, and Wiz is Michael Jackson, Wizard of Oz.
Okay, The Wizard is what I was thinking. So The Wizard, I remember like going to see that movie. It was really cool, and just being like super pumped about the Power Glove.
Yeah.
Do you remember this?
Yes, I remember.
And then I had like a rich neighbor who got the Power Glove, and it just sucked. And as the kid who couldn't afford the Power Glove, I kind of got glee out of it because I'd go to his house and I'd kick his butt because he was trying to use the Power Glove, and I'd just be like doing the quick A/B things that you can do with your finger on just a regular remote, and I'd be like, haha. Like, but anyhow, That was a disappointment, man. But it's funny. I wonder in
Yeah,
retrospect if that was like kind of
that
what
was that was just
set
a
the
big
groundwork for
commercial
like the
for.
Wii.
Yeah, yeah, probably because like a lot of the stuff like that they had back then, versions of it came back
Yeah.
for like the Wii or just
Do you think the
other things.
Wizard? I'm trying to remember because it's been a long time. And here's the thing I love about the internet. I should probably just look this stuff up on YouTube. Um, but wasn't it the case that like wasn't that the first viewing of Mario 3?
I think so.
Like I feel like they hadn't even released Mario 3 yet, and then he plays it in the movie, but maybe I'm misremembering that.
Maybe because I know that movie was pretty much just like a big commercial for Nintendo
Yeah.
with a Power Glove and all different video games. So I think they would have like showed a new game in there. So you're like, "Oh, I want to play that game." And like, well, it just came out. It's like,
But yeah, I bet that movie probably doesn't hold up. But I do
oh,
remember that was one where I saw it and like it wasn't like overhyped in my head like as a kid. It was kind of like the first Ninja Turtles movies. Those were great
yeah.
as a kid. Those were super fun. I'm just gonna talk like 80s nostalgia stuff.
Oh, I love 80s stuff.
Oh, Brianna said, I'm just sitting down for work trying to get back to it after having been ill for a week. Ooh, sorry
Oh,
you
okay.
got ill. That sucks. I'm glad you're kind of on the upswing. I vaguely remember crying. This is Brianna. I vaguely remember crying when the floating face in tall fish tank Zardon died in the Power Rangers show.
Oh yeah, Zordon.
Okay. I'm less familiar with Power Rangers. It's weird. Which is strange because like I should be really familiar because Gaz is like a Power Rangers
Yeah,
expert, you know. Um, but yeah, I don't know
yeah,
what it was that didn't connect with me. I feel like Power Rangers was just like a year or two.
yeah. It was more the age range. And for
Yeah,
me, like when I heard about it, I thought it was a cartoon. So I was like, oh, it's like a cartoon for kids. And then, like I saw like some news report where like parents are complaining that like kids were doing karate and so it was causing violence. And they showed some of the clips like, wait, is this live action? I was
so
like, what?
it was like literally creating like a Cobra Kai kind of situation.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, kids were kicking each other.
Kids are like fighting each other at malls, being like, "We're gonna have a kung fu battle."
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
And then I
that's
watched
that's
it.
hilarious.
I was like, this is stupid. I'm gonna watch it, make fun of it, and I was like, hey, I like this. It's not that bad.
Yeah, I
I
definitely
mean,
watched.
it's cheesy, but it's like the cheesy that I like. So I was like,
Yeah, I
uh,
watched some episodes, and I do remember that like there was a period where like right when you'd get off school, like it
mhm.
had that key time slot, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So like even if you didn't like Power Rangers, you know, if you had that little window of time to watch TV, you know, when you get home from school or whatever, it's like that was what was on, you know.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I don't know why it never connected, but I did watch a few episodes, and I will say I totally see the appeal of it because as an adult, like I'm, you know, we got like the Ultraman box set, like,
oh, okay.
uh, and like my son was like obsessed with Ultraman too when he was really little. But like I really enjoy Ultraman. Like it's really there's something about like the kind of it's kind of like there's a charm to like the cheesiness of it,
Yeah,
and so I kind of get it. Um, I think I understand Power Rangers now, you know, whereas as a
yeah, yeah.
kid I didn't.
And
Uh,
that's the show I didn't even know about Ultraman
yeah,
until like later as an adult, and I was like, oh, what's this? And like, but like, and then there's some episodes, but I hear a lot about it, like people like
yeah,
Gaz and Frankie Washington draws a lot of kaiju. He would draw Ultraman also. So like, Oh man, I kind of wish I knew more about this. Like, I want to see some episodes because it looks interesting.
Nice. Corey, hi Corey.
Corey!
Just said Big Bad Beetleborgs. That's where it's at. I forgot Corey's got a
Yeah,
17-hour drive, so we've been keeping
that's
him
right.
company. That's good.
And I
Um,
would see Big Bad Beetleborgs, and I was sad that it ended quickly. Also, VR Troopers, which is also
nice. Brianna said it was such a hype at the elementary school I was at. Everyone was running around color coded, fighting each other during lunch breaks. It was great. So Brianna was a part of this like Cobra Kai esque like ninja
Yeah, so she
battle.
was at age range
Yeah.
apparently.
So it was like I'm just guessing there was like a
I was in high school.
cornucopia full of
Yeah,
like weapons, and they're just like, all right, kids, the you know. Um,
get
anyhow,
your pink and red and yellow shirts and fight.
you know what's funny is like I feel like that was about
Which
the time that
I have
Mortal
a morpher.
Kombat.
Yeah, I
So
do have that too.
it's like a double hit for like parents where it's just like yeah, there was a lot of like violent
Yeah,
like which is kind of
yeah.
awesome.
There's that overlap from like the
Yeah.
80s to the 90s, and
Hmm.
yeah.
But I mean,
I
I
bought
remember
one of the
Karate
legacy
Kid.
morphers, so I have that morpher.
Oh, nice. I remember Karate Kid like too being
Hmm.
like a big deal, which is
Oh
why
yeah, yeah.
I've really enjoyed Cobra Kai. Like it's so corny, but I really love it. Like I think it's a lot of fun as a show. Uh, I always bummed out. I had the pink Power Ranger because she had the same name as me. Oh, Brianna. I wanted to be the yellow one. And then Corey was saying the ghost of Jay Leno and Frankenstein helped
Yeah,
some kids
big
harness the power of comic books.
big bad
Um,
Beetleborgs.
what's that from? What's the
Big
ghost
bad
of?
Beetleborgs. So that actually is pretty cool because um in their world, Big Bad Beetleborgs is a comic, and these kids go into this haunted house and they free this ghost, which acts like a genie. And the ghost does look like a cross between the genie from Aladdin and Jay Leno.
Oh, crazy!
And so he like has he makes wishes. So they and it's like, oh, since you freed me, I'll give you all a wish. They're like, well, we want to be big bad Beetleborgs. So like the stuff from the comics comes out and they morph into these robot beetle Power Ranger type characters. And since they wish to be the good guys, or the bad guys also came out, so they have something to fight. So
Oh, dude.
there's like a lot of, so oh not a lot, but there's like some scenes where like, oh, we need weapons to fight. So they got the two cartoonists that worked on it. So like one was evil and one was bad. So the bad guys got the evil cartoonist. So they he would draw weapons and monsters, and then the good guy would draw the weapons for the Borgs for for the heroes. So that you see these drawings just coming to life, and so that was pretty cool.
Oh, that's interesting,
Yeah.
dude. That's amazing. Corey also said he's got 11 hours to go, so we've
Oh
made
wow.
him like 7 good hours of content to kind of keep him company. Speaking of 7 hours of content, um, I have finished the. I wanted to kind of push it and go with this, but like we were talking about with like riding burnout and stuff,
Yeah.
I have work in like about 6 hours, so
Oh
or
yeah.
5 hours. So
I should
it,
sleep too.
yeah, and we're getting closer to 2. But if I can get out like 20 minutes earlier and have hit the goal, that's great. Frank, thanks for hanging out with me, dude. Where can everybody find your work and support what you do and like get some cool mini comics? Where can they do that?
Well, if you just want to support, you can always tip me on my PayPal. So you can find any of my links on Salazar Art Nation on YouTube and on Instagram. But if you want to buy some stuff, some comics, I have an Etsy store, and I also have a Gumroad, so you can get the digital comics. So if you live out of the U.S., you can just get the comics like right then and there as soon as you buy them. And I will be having in about 2 weeks the color and completed version of Captain Goggles and Masked Woman. So those are the mini comics that you can get, but they're gonna be combined and they're gonna be in color. And I do add some new art stuff in there, like I sneak in little things in there. So that will be available on my Etsy store, hopefully in 2 weeks.
Awesome. So yeah, and then like as for me, like you're on my channel, you still have seconds left to send a super chat if you would like. It's a good way to support a channel, and we pretty much read anything that's sent as a super chat out loud, as long as it's not belittling or demeaning to people. And I only say that because people have super chatted, so I'm throwing that out there. The other way that you can kind of support this channel is make sure you're subscribed and you've hit that bell, and that way you get notifications when we're about to go live. And maybe recommend the channel to some friends.
Yeah.
I haven't really mentioned that recently, but like that's
Sure.
that's not a bad thing. Like maybe make it a goal. Like, hey, I have an artist friend who's not hip to this channel yet. And I get them to check it out. That being said, the way you can support my art is pre-order Jacob's Apartment, either online or preferably go to your local bookstore. Next time you're at like a Barnes and Noble or like your local bookshop or your comic shop, just say, hey, this is in previews, right? It's in the previews catalog. Order this, carry it. It's a good book. It's my graphic novel, Jacob's Apartment, that if you're a fan of like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind or like Ghost World, like those slice of life doomed romance type stories, then this would be a book right up your alley, and I think you'll enjoy it. And it's a good way to support what I do and support indie comics. And then also buy 2 stories, which you can do today. And the second you order it and it gets delivered, it'll be shipped to you. It's a comic about faith and mental illness. And I know I was talking about kids and how kids are like a lot more, strange than, people give them credit for. But this book is not for kids. So don't buy this for like your 5-year-old kid. Like this is a book for adults, but still, it's not like adults with a capital A. But yeah, I think you guys will enjoy it. That being said, that'll do it. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Thank you, Brianna. I feel bad that you do end up catching the very end of this, but I appreciate that you do. And I'm glad you got to catch like a bit of it. And it was fun. And I hope that you're feeling better. And I appreciate to everybody who shows up in the chats. And if you guys have a long day too, make sure you watch Artcasters from earlier tonight or last night. It was a really fun one, packed with multiple guests, like a big round table of people who listen to Artcasters would be familiar with. And that'll do it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And check out the Big Bad Beetleborg theme song.
Yes, I'm gonna check
really
that
good.
out. I'm actually gonna look that up. That'll be part of my.
It's really fun and goofy, so I think you'll like it.
Yeah, that'll be part of my wind down process. I was talking about that, like where when I'm done drawing, it takes me like 10 or 15 minutes to kind of like cool down from the zone of drawing to just be ready to sleep. And so usually I'll get a snack, I cool down for a second. It's like 15 minutes and then I can go to bed. That is what I will do. Corey, be safe on your drive, dude.
Yeah.
And everybody out there, hope you're having a fun, productive day. And I will see you guys on the next stream. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Adios. So long. Farewell. Adieu, adieu, adieu.